All for joining. My name's Abigail. I'm on the education team at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. And we're based in Portland, but we get to work with teachers and students all throughout the state, which is really fun and exciting. And we get to support projects that also expand through the whole state, as well as New Hampshire, Massachusetts, kind of the whole Northeast. So, a little bit of what our plan today is. We're going to start with an introduction to community science, to the Protecting Ash Project, and then what to expect during the fall field season. And then we'll go into data collection and contribution, a brief overview of some of the educator resources, and then I'll open it up for a Q&A and any idea sharing, any planning, any questions that you have. There is a lot of content in this session today, so feel free to throw questions in the chat. Stop me at any time, but I'm really going to try to pack a lot into this session. And if after the session you still have more questions, you need clarification on things, and we don't get to them, definitely contact me and we can have some extra conversations. So, on our education team at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, we work to create opportunities for students to engage in real, current, and relevant scientific research about ways that climate change is impacting the Gulf of Maine. And one way that we do that is through our community science work. We also call it citizen science or participatory science. All means the same thing. Basically, anybody is able to join these projects and submit data and be part of this research. So we connect with scientists, community leaders, resource managers across the region who have questions about climate change impacts to ecosystems that they need help investigating. And we work collaboratively with them to define protocols that are appropriate for students and help answer important and broad questions. And with this ASH project, we worked with a group called the Ash Protection Collaboration across Wabanakig, and they're based at UMaine, and they've been really awesome partners in this work, doing really incredible work connecting people throughout the state around ash monitoring. So after we're defining our protocols and we have these projects, we support educators with workshops and curriculum resources that build around these projects to help learners develop those scientific inquiry skills as they contribute data to these active research projects. So the goals of the work are that students are and feel really connected to their natural spaces as well as their community, that they gain skills in authentic scientific inquiry, and then that project leaders receive that authentic usable data. And none of this can be done without really awesome educators. So we want to support those educators as much as we can and hope that you all feel supported in this work. And please, again, reach out with any questions, any ideas. Nothing's too crazy, and we can work on it together. So we support a wide variety of projects throughout the whole year, which can be found on our online platform called the Ecosystem Investigation Network. Let me just drop that link in the chat really quick. I'll also be following up with everything that I share today, all of those links so that you have those easily accessible. So on the Ecosystem Investigation Network, again, we have this wide variety of projects. And during our fall field season, we support virtual events. We do kind of extra fieldwork support, things like that around both our intertidal crabs project and then this Protecting Ash project. And then a little bit later in the fall, we'll get into coastal flooding, and those other projects kind of follow the rest of those seasons. So for this session, we're focused on our ash project and monitoring ash trees and then contributing to the project called Protecting Ash, a preservation-focused inventory project. So we're hoping to get as many people out as possible within this fall field season to get a real snapshot of what's happening across the region. So this is a little suggested order of operations for our field season, starting by introducing the project to students. And one really great way to do that is through our scientist welcome and update that I'm going to be sending out next week. So we had our team from ABCAL record us a nice little video to get students really excited and motivated to go out into the field. We also have some background lessons that build both the ecological and cultural significance of ash, which I'll also go into in a minute, and get students prepared and ready to go out into the field to collect this data. After that, building some fieldwork skills. So again, we have some lessons around that, but also just going out, practicing, being out in the field. And then collecting data and contributing data is kind of the meat of this whole field season. And then at the end, or actually throughout the field season, I'll be sending some project updates where I'll add in some resources, some videos, articles, any news that comes out kind of during the field season about ASH. And would love to also hear from all of you, whether that's through contributing data, if you want to send me any stories or photos, we really appreciate and enjoy that. And then I can, with permission, either send those out to the whole project community or kind of share that within our team and get really excited about the really awesome work that everyone's doing. We also have a discussion thread on our website where you can post any stories, any fun things that you're doing, any questions, and we have a team that can look into that and answer that. So we really want people to feel connected during this field season and get those updates and be really excited about going out into the field. And at the end of the field season, we'll have an opportunity to connect virtually with a project scientist, and that should be around November or December. Um, this is a little different if you've ever joined any field seasons in the past. Kind of our structure has changed a bit, where we're really going to try to schedule these meetings when people have classes, because that tends to be when students are able to show up. So I have an interest form that I will send out, and I will link that in an email following this meeting where you can fill that out and tell me what days and times you're available, and if you're interested in general in meeting with a scientist and connecting with other classrooms. So I'll send the link to that interest form after this meeting. And we really want folks to be able to chat with each other. We did this towards the end of the field season because we felt that then students will have an idea of what the project's about. They'll be able to be prepared with questions and also share what awesome observations they made. So it is a bit more of an equal sharing where everyone's a scientist at the table and is able to share their own experiences. Also, a quick note is that although we're kind of concluding the field season at the around November, December, data can be collected at any time of the year. Main reason that we push for the fall is because there's some leaves on the trees, even though they're starting to fall a little bit soon, but that's a lot easier to identify ash trees and the different species of ash trees when they do have leaves. And it's definitely not impossible. There's a lot of great tips for winter identification. We have some more detailed identification videos coming out next week that have some tips for identifying ash trees in the winter and identifying ash in general. So look out for that. I will add you all to kind of that updates email list. If you don't want to receive those updates, you can just let me know or unsubscribe. So a little more background. Why are we looking at ash trees and why are we looking at brown ash specifically? So we're monitoring ash trees for both the introduction of emerald ash borer, which is an invasive forest pest that has been coming in and impacting the ash trees and killing the ash trees. And brown ash is both critical to the health of main forested wetlands as they grow typically along streams or rivers, and it's very important to the lifeways of Wabanaki people as it's a central part of the Wabanaki origin story and as materials are used for basket making. Wabanaki people have been effectively stewarding ash for thousands and thousands of years and have been leading efforts across the Northeast to protect ash. So we're here to join that effort, but want to note that it's been going on for a while, and we're just going to add a little bit more capacity. So, like I said, there's some threats to ash, to brown ash, and white and green ash, which are the ash trees that we have in the Northeast. So there's both the impacts of climate change and this invasive emerald ash borer, which is threatening to eliminate ash from the Northeast. We're seeing a really large impact in the Midwest. In Michigan was where the emerald ash borer was first found, and now it's kind of moved towards the Northeast. But Maine is at a really great point right now where a lot of Maine actually isn't impacted by emerald ash borer. So there's folks all around the country that are looking to Maine to be kind of that place of hope for ash, which is really exciting, which is something that I think is important when we're telling the story of why this data is so important to collect. We are really specially situated in Maine for some great hope in saving our brown ash and our ash trees in general. Emerald ash borer is a tiny bug that burrows into the tree and kills almost all of the trees it encounters. So efforts to prepare for, track, and manage emerald ash borer in the next few years are super critical for the survival of this species. So we all came together, the Ash Protection Collaboration Across Wabanakik, also known as APCA, the Maine Forest Service, and both of those groups have a lot of partners that are working on this. So we coordinated action, um, and that has the potential to slow the expansion of the infestations as new management and regeneration strategies are implemented. Um, and so this is a collaboration among researchers at UMaine, the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance, the Maine Forest Service, and many tribal leaders. And they're really looking for our help. So in getting folks across the region out into the forest, making those careful observations of ash trees, the project seeks to detect early signs and symptoms of emerald ash borer as it arrives to new areas, which gives foresters and managers the opportunity to respond quickly. Helpful to find seeds and seed trees to collect seed for research and store for future generations of ash. And then also finding high quality basket trees to give access to Wabanaki basket makers to continue practicing their tradition as these healthy ash trees start to grow a bit more scarce. So a lot of goals for this project. There is also kind of an additional goal that was added recently about lingering ash. And I can kind of talk about that later when we talk about some ideas for action. So this is a map of where folks have either collected data or are preparing to collect data, have been really interested, but we would really love to expand this community as much as we can. Whether you see your community or not, it'd be great to have you on this map. There's a lot of land in Maine, as we all know, and only about 6.5% is public land. So through a pretty long history of violence and forced removal, Wabanaki communities currently have pretty limited access and ability to monitor and maintain ash, as they've done since time immemorial. Um, so it's really important to get folks out there monitoring their land, giving access, and uh, yeah, being eyes on the ground in places where other folks might not have access to. So this was kind of a pretty limited explanation of the importance of protecting ash. I do feel like I just talked for a lot about it. But for a much better representation, we definitely recommend listening to the renowned basket maker of the Mi'kmaq Nation, Richard Syllaboy. There's a short video linked in our facilitator resource, which we'll pull out and send as a recording of this info session. And it's a great way to really start and introduce this project and show the importance of ash. So, any quick questions before I go into kind of data collection, contribution, any of the resources? Okay, keep it moving then. So what are we doing? What are we collecting? How are we collecting data? These are some photos that I pulled from fieldwork, and I think show some important parts of fieldwork. So first is working in groups. So we recommend working in groups of 3 to 4 to examine one tree, and one tree is equal to one protocol. So each group of students would have one protocol for a tree. If they want to monitor multiple trees, then you just make sure that they have multiple protocols. The second thing I'll call out is safety. You will be in the forest and it may be also hunting season. So high vis is totally recommended and just being aware of your surroundings, in general, being in the forest. In the second photo, you can also see that there's some flagging tapes on the trees. So this is a great reminder to help you remember what trees were monitored, keep track of teams' data, always useful to have. And then that last photo is our reminder to have fun. The photo comes from Lee Academy, which is in Lee, Maine. And they went out for data collection on Halloween, which is why we have a shark doing some data collection. And so while the protocol is a set list of data that we want to collect and we want it to be accurate, there's definitely a lot of room for fun and excitement while in the field. So just always want to remind of that. This should be fun and yeah, let your students kind of run free with that. So going through the protocol, when going into the field, we recommend that you print out the protocol instead of trying to rely on technology in the woods. So you can, it is a mobile site. It's all web-based. There's no app, but you can have it out in the field. Just recommend printing out the protocol tends to be a lot easier. The protocol is in a checklist format, and each protocol corresponds to one tree. So monitor a tree, use one protocol, go to the next one, different protocol. There's two versions of the protocol. There's one with images and one without. All of this, again, is linked on that ecosystem investigation network under that prep and collect tab. You can scroll down and you'll see the protocol, you'll see ID cards, you'll see some informative videos, the whole data set, everything's on there. And they're all printable. And yeah, so that's all found on, again, the ecosystem investigation network. So there's pretty limited amount of materials that you need for this project. If you're doing just the basic protocol, which is what I'm gonna kind of go over today, all you really need is the protocol and the ID cards and a camera. And of course, a clipboard and pencil is really helpful. Flagging tape is also recommended just to keep track of the trees, but definitely not necessary. And then if you would like to do some measurements, which goes into the optional questions, then you'd need either a regular measuring tape or a DBH tape to find the DBH and measure the trees. Other than that, pretty limited amount of materials. Sometimes having boots and extra jackets and things like that are helpful if you're out in the forest, but other than that, just yourself. So, going through some of our required questions and the data that you would be collecting in the field. The first is looking first for identifying ash and then identifying what species of ash tree you're looking at. So it has a list of characteristics of ash trees of the different species. When we're looking at the species of ash, we care about the difference between brown ash and then white and green. So you don't have to know the difference between white and green ash. Sometimes they can be really hard to tell the difference between. So it's just those two categories, either brown ash or white and green. Um, and if you're confused or unsure, sending in a lot of photos is really helpful for identification um, and just so that we can double check. The next is the tree naturally occurring or is it planted? So are you in a forest or are you maybe walking down a tree-lined street? The next part is looking for those signs and symptoms of emerald ash borer. So two different things. The symptoms of emerald ash borer are evidence of stress, which may be related to emerald ash borer, but could also be just signs of other factors of stress, maybe heat, drought, other insects. Yeah, could be a variety of things. So this is something like woodpecker activity, crown dieback, which is when the top of the tree starts to die. Epicormic shoots, which is when the tree starts shooting out little branches kind of close to the bottom. And so this indicates evidence of stress, might not be emerald ash borer, but could be a great sign of it. And then signs of emerald ash borer means that there's definitive evidence of emerald ash borer. So they make distinct D-shaped exit holes, and I'll show a few pictures after this. And also S-shaped galleries on the bark. So if you notice the bark peeling back a little, you can see some of those galleries that the bug makes. And again, having all of those photos to support is really helpful. We go in and validate the data, and that helps us understand if maybe there's some concerns in this area or not. The Maine Forest Service and APCAW and GMRI, we all go in and we look at the data, and we'll reach out if we have any questions. So photo evidence is one of the most helpful tools for us to go in to understand what's happening in the forest. And then the last part is tree health. So looking if the tree is healthy or alive, dead, if it's been cut, if it's starting to decline. Um, and those are all kind of written out in pretty simple language to help you identify that. And then the last part is just peer review, checking your work. We tend to group data from one class into what we call a trip. And if we see that one group identified um, let's say green ash correctly, we're going to assume that another group checked that work and that their identification is also correct. So just helpful as a double check. I'm not going to go into the optional questions that we have just because of time, but they ask participants to determine the sex of the tree, which is helpful for seed collection, take the height and DBH, that's diameter at breast height of the tree, and then make observations about the field site to survey what the surrounding ecosystem is like. So if you have some more questions about those fields, we can totally go through them at the end or just reach out and I can help you walk through those as well. So some ID resources. We have 4 different ID cards, and they're used for identifying ash trees in general. So there's a specific branching pattern. They branch opposite of each other. There's also a specific leaf pattern. They're compound leaves. Um, and bark and seeds and leaf shape and things like that. That's all described in that ID card. The other one is helpful to uh, learn the difference between the different species, especially when it's the winter. You can look at things like the leaf scar and the bark, but looking at the different leaves, brown ash have their leaves are really close to the stem, whereas white and green have a little bit of a gap. They also have really corky bark on brown ash, whereas white ash has these really distinct diamond fissures on their bark, and same with green ash. And then these are some signs and symptoms of the emerald ash borer. So again, you can see that those D-shaped exit holes and that snake-shaped, S-shaped galleries. Those are distinct signs of the emerald ash borer. And then things like crown dieback, epicormic shoots, bark splitting, and woodpecker activity are symptoms of stress on the tree, which may be related to emerald ash borer as well. So all of these also are on the Ecosystem Investigation Network and are printable. And so we recommend bringing those out into the field as well as the protocol. There's also some supporting videos that are coming out next week that the APCA team recorded about how to identify ash trees, how to, what other ones did they make? How to determine, I think, the sex of the tree, and then, yeah, how to spot signs of emerald ash borer. So those will be coming out, and those will hopefully be useful to support learning about the protocol. So this is, right, this is our 4th ID card, which shows you the difference between a female and a male ash tree and what to look for with the seeds. So a few tips for fieldwork. As a suggestion, we've seen some success in assigning students in a group, some specific group roles to help stay on task. So maybe someone takes photos, someone is looking closely for the signs and symptoms of emerald ash borer, someone's in charge of the clipboard. And obviously, you all know your class is best, so whatever feels right for the group of students, totally run with that. Some educators in the past have shared this tip about taking photos. If you don't have access to a lot of devices or maybe you're not allowed to use any phones or tablets or things like that. So you might just have your own phone. Taking a photo of the group, taking all their photos, taking a photo of the group again has helped to just organize those photos in a camera roll. So just a fun tip to put up there. However, just making sure that none of the photos that are uploaded have any faces in them, just to protect privacy of students. And then the last tip is just expect a little bit of chaos. You're out in the woods, you're having fun, you're out of the classroom. Some students, it could be the first time that they really get to explore the forest. So allowing just some extra time for exploration, and noticing the ecosystem around them, is really important. All right. Any questions about data collection, the protocol, things like that before I hop into this? Totally okay. If not, we can save questions to the end. All right, keep moving. So once you've collected the data, now you can contribute it. So on the Ecosystem Investigation Network, you can contribute data by clicking on the Contribute Data tab, and then creating a trip. So you as an educator need an account on the Ecosystem Investigation Network, and that's just an email and your name and a password. So pretty simple. And then you can create the trip, and it allows you to set the location, the date, and the number of data sheets that you need. So as the adult in the group, you can create an account while your students should not be having accounts, unless you work with some older students. But the trip allows you to keep all of the classes' data together. And once you create that trip, you're then given a list of student passcodes, which you can give to students to access their online data sheet. So I won't go into detail on how to get those passphrases and create that trip because we have a few supporting videos to explain it, which I'll send along and which are also in the educator guide, also on the Ecosystem Investigation Network. So I'll make sure that those get into your hands so you're able to figure out how to work through this system. I will say data contribution tends to be the place where folks seem to have the most trouble. So definitely reach out if you need assistance. I would be happy to even sit online with your class as you're doing data submission to help troubleshoot. And if there's kind of trends or patterns that you're seeing with data contribution, definitely let us know because we're really trying to improve that as much as we can. One thing that always comes up is if you're taking photos on an iPhone, sometimes it's in the HEIC format, and that doesn't upload onto the site. It needs to be in either like a JPEG or like a PNG file. So keeping that in mind. What I usually do is just screenshot the photo, and that tends to work. Um, all right. So you can view data in the View Data tab. Your data is not going to automatically appear in this list because we go in and we validate the data. And once we validate the data, then it will appear. And you'll notice that you aren't able to view a detailed data sheet from other people. You can view your own, but not other folks. Um, this is because we have some sensitive data in this project, and we reworked recently all of our data management plans on the platform. Um, and we contracted with groups like Local Context, which is an Indigenous run group, to enhance our data sovereignty protections. So, in order to protect information on ash stands that can be closely guarded and shared within families of ash harvesters, we developed a public view of the data that masks coordinates and location-specific information. So, a lot of those details. And then we've kind of shifted about how we talk about community science from a focus on data collection to one of more relationship and building with the environment. So it's a nice feature where we can protect that data, but you are able to go in and see your own as well. Okay, so let's talk about the resources that we have that are available to help youth get involved in this work. So we've compiled a lesson sequence as kind of a suggestion for how youth might build these science skills, some historical understanding, and values that support long-term ash stewardship. We also linked many other resources that connect to this work that might be more interesting or relevant to your students. So feel free to kind of pick and choose lessons, resources. Don't feel like you have to follow this exactly to be able to contribute to the project. There's a few kind of videos and activities that I think are kind of the most importance, and I will call them out as what I think would be helpful in kind of shaping the project. But yeah, feel free to kind of take what you want. And we've organized this resource around the values of respect, relationship, relevance, responsibility, and reciprocity. So you'll see that reflected in these resources. Oh, and all of this is on our Learning Resource Hub, which is teach.gmri.org. And next week, we're coming out with its big glow up. We've just been redoing the whole site. So you'll see it'll be much easier to find a lot of our resources, and they're tagged and categorized in different ways. So next week, we'll send a big announcement about that. But the resource is easy to find on our Ecosystem Investigation Network, and I will send that also in a follow-up. So our first lesson is connecting to place. And so this is that video of Richard Syllaboy, which is a who's a Mi'kmaq basket maker talking about ash trees and basket making. I think this is one of the most essential resources of the project to introduce what students are doing. He just talks about ash in a really wonderful and beautiful way and shows that cultural connection and also the ecological importance to ash trees. There also is some guidance and option to bring in a community member into your classroom who can talk about their connection to trees. So there's a list of foresters, of local land trusts, of Wabanaki knowledge sharers, and yeah, et cetera. And if you have any um, questions or need ideas, totally reach out to us and we can try to connect you with folks. Um, and then there's also an option to make some informal observations of the site in which you'll be doing field work. So this introduces students to the cultural and ecological importance of ash trees, and starts their developing of their own relationship to the forest, and kind of shows the emphasis and the importance of storytelling when it comes to understanding your place and understanding what's happening in your environment. This next lesson is relationships in a forested ecosystem. And so within this lesson, you can find ash species cards with information about what the organism needs. So each card has a different organism on it, and then how it might relate to ash trees. So students can take on a role of their species to explain their connection to ash trees. We've done this before with groups where we have each person introduce themselves as the species and really take it on and say some fun facts about it. And it's really fun to say, I'm a red squirrel today. Um, and then there's also a diagram of an ash tree within that lesson where they can put their species on the ash tree. They can start to understand the different parts of it. So things like the leaves, the bark, the roots, and then make connections in their own ecosystem. So they're building that connection between ash trees, their environment, and having kind of this more holistic view of the field site, the ecosystem, realizing that ash trees don't just exist in their own place, but they have a lot of things that rely on them, and they rely on a lot of other things to stay healthy. The third lesson is a history of protecting ash. And so within this lesson is a timeline activity in which students organize and then scale a timeline of events related to ash stewardship, basketry, and Wabanaki sovereignty. And there's some maps and discussion questions related to land ownership and the spread of emerald ash borer. This I also think is one of the more important lessons as it places the work in historical context, as Wabanaki people have been stewarding ash trees for thousands and thousands of years, um, time immemorial. So it's really important to put into context. And also for students to place themselves within the history of ash stewardship and start to develop a vision for a better future. I will make a note that this is not a comprehensive Wabanaki history and definitely should not replace any Wabanaki studies. And it's an activity to explain a portion of the history in relation to ash stewardship, and to place that work into context to help understand expansive time. Um, Highly suggest that you continue Wapanaki studies with supplemental resources. There's ones from the Department of Education, and we have all those linked within the curriculum as well. Um, One other note I'll make about this lesson is that learning this history is very emotional, and for some students may reflect their own experiences. So allow a lot of time for breaks, for conversations, for some pre-preparation for students, letting them know that this is the activity that they're going to be going through, and also allowing for students to bring in their own experiences where they feel comfortable and where it feels appropriate. Um, and giving some time for reflection and the ability to talk with those that they trust about these kinds of topics, because it can be a lot to grapple with, especially if this is kind of a first exposure to Wabanaki history and settler colonialism. So the fourth lesson is protecting ash. It's a we're based around responsibility. And so there's a video in there that describes the work that Maine has done to prepare for the arrival of emerald ash borer, as well as the a whole guided exploration of the project website. And with all of these activities, there are lesson slides that go along with them, as well as student pages, and also assessment tools. And so with this lesson, they can build an understanding of what they'll be doing in the field and why it's important, and how it kind of relates to that broader work of ash protection. Right. Next lesson. We're almost almost through it. Developing fieldwork skills. So there are fieldwork skills stations within this lesson, that allow students the opportunity to practice identifying ash trees, spotting signs and symptoms of emerald ash borer, distinguishing between male and female trees, seeing what photos are good photos to submit, measuring tree height, things like that. So it allows you to practice a lot of the skills that you need in the field. And I think doing a lot of pre-teaching beforehand is helpful to prepare for going out into the field and really understanding what are we doing, why are we doing it, and being able to be a little bit more focused once you're out in the field. Because we know people get really excited coming out into the forest. Um, this is really quickly. This is collecting data. So in our next order of activities, if um, if you don't have any ash trees on your school property, so a lot of people will just go out into the forest right by their school, but if you aren't near a forested area, don't have any ash trees around the area uh, that your school is on, definitely look to local land trusts or conservation commissions. There's also a list of local foresters, so asking them. And then you can also connect with us, and we'd be happy to connect you with folks, and point you in the direction of a place to take data. And then these final two lessons go through reciprocity. So it's really important that when we're collecting data, we're also sharing that data and giving that data back, and really figuring out what we can do with this data. So rather than a um, more extractive, taking data from our ecosystems, from our forests, we're now giving it back. So the first part is just submitting your observations on the Ecosystem Investigation Network. Again, there's some videos to walk you through exactly how to do that, and I'll make sure to send those along. And then you can look at other observations. Again, you can't go into that detailed view, but you can see where folks are collecting data and if they're seeing signs of emerald ash borer. And it's a nice way to see if there's, places nearby you and you're seeing kind of similar things or not. So this final lesson is about interpreting and taking action. So there's activities in there to interpret the data that your class has collected and be able to discuss it with each other, with their peer community. And then there's also these ash stewardship action cards, which have a bunch of ideas for action related to ash trees. Um, so it gives a variety of ideas of what you can do after you've collected this data and you're really learning about ash trees. So it's this kind of action piece. And if you're interested in stewardship action, don't really have any idea where to start, definitely let me know and I can try to connect you with someone who could assist. For example, we've had classes do seed collection with the Wild Seed Project, which is based in Cape Elizabeth. Or the APCA team has gone to schools to help with seed collection or talk about action that students can take. We've also had classes assist in predator released with the Maine Forest Service. So a class from Old Orchard Beach went out with Colleen Tierling, who's the state entomologist in Portland, and they went out and they released these predator wasps, which go in and can kill the emerald ash borer, and is a management strategy that the state has been using to try to combat emerald ash borer. There's also a class that created signs to put up on local trails with information about ash trees and the emerald ash borer. And folks from the state have been really excited about that because they always say they're like, no one really wants to listen to the state, but they would love to listen to kids and to young people and see these really fun signs. So it really is impactful work. But if you're not able to do any of those kinds of stewardship actions, collecting data is an action. So that's really important. And this data helps inform management strategies, improve access to brown ash for basket makers. And is just overall important in understanding the health of our forests in the Northeast. There's a lot of other suggestions in the educator guide as well. Um, and I also had someone ask a question about what to do if emerald ash borer is already in their community, um, which is a really great question. It can be really sad to see a lot of the trees around you dying and feel like there is less hope. Um, but there is a lot that we can do in those areas. And so this is where I'm talking about that lingering ash that I mentioned earlier. So there's some groups around the Northeast that are doing these projects that are focused on finding if there are any, or trying to find if there's any healthy ash trees within a stand that's been impacted by emerald ash borer. And if we're finding those healthy ash trees, what is it about those ash trees that allow them to be healthy and can we learn something from them and want to protect those trees? So that's something to totally look out for. There's also uh, if you're in a place that's like pretty heavily infested, it could be a good place to release those predator wasps to do some management. And then putting up signage around your town is super effective. Telling folks not to transport wood, putting up signs to just be like, why are all of our trees dying? What's going on here? Just helpful in spreading that word and getting more people educated on this topic. And then the last thing I'll share is there's an extensive resource library in the curriculum as well with a bunch of videos, book lists, articles, links out to some Wabanaki studies curriculum, um, and just kind of a variety of resources. So there's a lot that you can really look into and absorb. But from kind of a more basic standpoint, if you just want to go through that protocol, do a few of those introduction videos, that is so awesome. And we really appreciate any kind of learning that happens around ASH. So that is all my talking. Oops. So any questions? I'll stop sharing so we can.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is that slideshow you just presented shareable? Is
Yes,
that
I
in?
will share
Yeah,
that after the meeting. Totally.
cool.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that it has kind of all the links I mentioned in it as well.
Thanks.
I don't have any questions, but just really excited to be a part of this. I was kind of looking on the main, I think it was the main dog website, and I came across this, and yeah, just really excited. I didn't know about this, so this is something new to me, and it just really feels good to be able to like involve kids and being able to save the trees, literally, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, thanks. And this project kind of came up within the last year. So it is a newer project that we've been really working on, and just there are so many people around the state who are really excited to collect this data and see the data come in. And there's a really strong effort in Maine, which has just like gives me chills to talk about. It's just so exciting to see so many people involved. So um, I'm happy to have everyone here who's excited to get more people involved. Any other questions or ideas or things like that? I know it was a lot of information. I was putting together the slides. I was like, whoa, this is going to be a lot of talking. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I won't keep you on here too much longer. Just some next steps. I'll send out a field season interest form where you can fill out kind of if you need any other additional support, if you want to join any of those virtual meetings, if you have other questions. It's just helpful for us to kind of track what's going on and also provide as much support as we can. Um, and then we'll be sending out updates through the field season, hoping for them to be kind of bi-weekly, where we'll add more resources. Don't want to overwhelm anyone, so feel free to look at them as you will. But we also would like to kind of pull some highlights from the season. So if you have any stories, we'll try to share as much as we can for what's going on within the community. And then yeah. And then please reach out to me with any other questions, any other support you might need. We'd be happy to help in whatever way we can.